Hello everyone, and welcome to this next episode of Redefining Our Boundaries. We have here today with us Charla Pereira, author of Think 3D, a user experience designer at Microsoft HoloLens for many years, and I like to think a 3D experience creator. Charla, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm sort of excited before we get to, let's say, the substantive component of this interview here today, to really talk a little bit about your journey here, right? I've read a lot about your early work in 2D for the likes of the Jackson 5, your work around robotic interface design for Bill Gates, and obviously many years you've spent at Microsoft HoloLens, right? Did you always want to be in the technology space?
Definitely not something I thought I would do, right? I came out of college as a graphic designer. I'm so old that I was one of the first people to put my portfolio on a laptop. And so with that came a lot of interest, I guess, in the Seattle market for me, a graphic designer that kind of understood the digital world a little bit. And so with that, I kind of went into a small startup, built a lot of websites, and worked with the Jackson 5 and other amazing customers putting digital websites together. I was one of the first people to put 3D on the internet with games and really pushing the limits of that. And we have to remember back then it was dial-up and certain things that weren't so easy to bring 3D into some of those user experiences. But yeah, and then I joined Microsoft, and after that, I really ended up, I shipped Office 365, wanted to find something different, and ended up in a group in a space where we were taking code that could help you paint in 3D and robotics and certain things. That's when I fell in love with being able to play around with digital content. And that's when I entered HoloLens and then did some VR work as well, and then augmented reality with your phone and stuff.
So the Metaverse. A lot of people would argue that the Metaverse presents this new technology paradigm, right?
Sure.
And if we sort of hark back 10 plus years, what, the advent of social, cloud computing and mobile did for a generation is what Metaverse is almost poised to do for the next generation. And there's this question around, organizations really asking themselves, how is this going to shape our future strategy? What investments do we need to make today?
Sure.
What are the implications for business model, talent management even, right? In your view of the world, what opportunities do you feel the Metaverse, contemplates for?
So I think what we need to do is really kind of step back and realize that we're kind of already taking steps towards this metaverse, or this digital and physical combining. So as we kind of progress through, and all the different companies and all the different people in the world are trying to grasp what this next thing is, I think it's going to be very ambiguous until we start defining, as well as the tech getting to the right speed. I think it's kind of like our ideas are here and the tech needs to catch up a little bit. It just becomes consumable, right? There's not a lot, to bring the price tag down on some of these devices to be able to afford to be able to use it. And that's what you're seeing with VR right now, right? A lot more people are getting the device, they're getting it on their head, they're starting to see what it is to be fully immersed in a technology and in an experience and whatever that is. And they're getting more comfortable with the idea that maybe I could spend more time in this space. And what does that mean when it then, in that mixed reality view of like a HoloLens or a Magic Leap, when you can mix those two worlds completely immersively together? And I can have a environmentally aware computer, you're there, and I could put a hologram on your head and it knows, that's the level that people need to get comfortable with.
Do you think, we can expect to see from designers such as yourself, from companies who work in the space, in terms of, kind of pushing that envelope in what AR, VR products can do today and what they can do 5 years from now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we're seeing is every company is going to have the super high-end device that can do a lot more. The challenge being making it lighter, making it accessible, making these bits and pieces that go into that high one more cost effective to put in the more affordable version of this technology. And it's the same thing that's happening now, especially with Meta. They've got a higher end one that they're talking about that should be coming out this year. then they've got their Quest, right? So you're seeing this kind of really wide range of, and then everyone's got a phone. So we're going to see that AR on the phone continuing to grow because that's my most accessible place to get to my consumer.
Web 2.0 really taught us that there were negative externalities associated with this type of technology shift, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of that was around, obviously, data privacy and security. Some argue that, the metaverse stands to only amplify some of those challenges and perhaps even create new ones.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of conversation around addiction, for example, to these sort of stimulated environments and what that means to behavior patterns.
Sure.
Well, I mean, again, as someone who has worked in this space, how do you think, everyone from governments to industries need to think through, be it regulation or, technology management in certain ways?
I can remember a point in time, a friend of mine's dad saying they don't want GPS in their car. Because they'd be tracking them. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? You don't want to, right? But at the same time, I think there's always this mental shift. And I don't even believe that people understand how much they're tracked right now, just with their phone, right? And all those things. And from the privacy, I don't think these devices are doing anything different. It does amplify your being in a digital space, right? It amplifies how much digital content you're seeing. I think where it gets concerning is like when you start talking about embodiment, and there's a positive way to that. You can go and experience, something that you've never seen before and feel like you're in that place and it's the most amazing experience. But in the wrong hands, I think that fear-based is like, well, there's certain things I don't want my kids to experience, right? And how do we control and regulate that? So there's that piece to it. So there's the kind of embodiment piece. And there's also the piece of how do we control the user interface? So for example, in HoloLens, we experienced it a lot, how your arm would get fatigued with the arm gestures. Your neck maybe would get sore if you wore it for extended periods of times. Those types of things, how do you, as a user experience or as a designer myself, that was the problem I needed to solve, right? When I was on Dynamics 365 guides, we went into a factory for the first time and saw how loud it was. And I thought, oh my gosh, I use audio all the time to direct someone to go to the right place in a virtual world. What am I gonna do when they can't hear those audio cues anymore? So there's so many levels of safety that we need to consider. And, we have to have trust that the people behind it are human and having our best interest, right? Just like we do with our phones, our alarm systems, or all those things in our lives, right? We want it in safe hands.
Right. I mean, I definitely think there is sort of this role that government and industry need to play in striving towards sort of better regulation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't help but contrast that I feel the European Union actually has probably gone the furthest in trying to bring greater regulation. And if you think of, GDPR as an example,
Sure.
I feel the US maybe is lagging a tad behind.
Yeah.
But that conversation is definitely getting started and garnering momentum. If unconstrained, you could sort of have any feature built in or sort of a value proposition created. What would that be?
The crystal ball question's so hard for me. I have so many thoughts and everything that I would want. But I think, a safe environment for people to, mixing that physical and digital world even more so that it's kind of fully immersed. And I don't want to lose my physical world completely. I'm not one of those people that would like maybe spend more time in a virtual environment versus a physical. But I do just want my content to be smarter and more aware of what my needs. And it's still feeling human.
To round this conversation up today, what's next for Charla?
I don't know. I am managing an amazing team of people, and I'm developing some really interesting side projects in virtual reality. I love it. It has my heart. All this technology and all those things I always somehow come back to it. Now that the book is done, I don't know what's next. Whatever is next in the technology, that gets me excited. And as for that, I'm just really happy where I am right now, doing what I'm doing, and, humanizing content that is digital is really important to me, and really driving it through story and true customer stories are super important to me as well. So yeah, just being my designer self.
Well, thank you, Charla.
Yeah.
I mean, I really hope we see more of what you have planned, and hopefully we continue this dialogue.
Yeah.
So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for making it out here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Great.